Hello and welcome, everyone. It's Tuesday. Yay! Because I'm that nerd. You're welcome. Today on the CARA method, we are going to dive deeper into assessing, which is the second part of the CARA method. So, to recap, clarify, assess, realign, and achieve. That is the CARA method. This may sound incredibly familiar because what I have experienced in life is that almost everything is exactly the same in a completely different way. So it's very much like grow, goal, reality, opportunity, work, or let's see, what are some of the other ones? Swoop and lean and and I can't think of any more right now, but there are so many. It is insane. The sheer quantity of frameworks available to help us organize and navigate what we are doing. So we talked about clarity before. It's all about really understanding your why and your foundation. So that's going to be your values, your vision, your mission. What are the things, the foundational things that you are doing? Because when you know those, it makes it way easier to decide where you need to go next. I mean, really realistically. And assessing is the second part of that. So once you are so deliciously clear and have your foundations in place, the next place you want to go is into assessment. So let's get some clarity around assessment, right? We're going to CARA method this right out, my friends. Jump on in and ask questions as we go. I do not mind being interrupted. In fact, I kind of love it. So let's do this. Clarifying assessment. So what is an assessment? There are different types of assessments. You might, when you hear that word, you might think of things like GENOS or DISC or Profile XT. GENOS is an emotional intelligence assessment. DISC is a personality style and communication style assessment. Profile XT is going to be one of those professional assessments that's going to kind of put you on a bell curve of how are you at being managed, how are you at pace, how are you. Fun fact, I'm a 2 in manageability on the Profile XT, which I find incredibly accurate. What I know, this is interesting. So when I first took that assessment, I've taken a ridiculous number of assessments in my life. When I took the Profile XT, I had a lot of different feedback. A lot of people had taken it before and they're like, oh, I don't like it. It's kind of insulting. And I was like, I've never found an assessment necessarily insulting. I have had it be so accurate it's rude, which is perhaps the same thing in a completely different way. What I did know is as soon as I saw the 2 under manageability, I died and I called up 3 of my ex-managers and I was like, I just want you to be so validated right now. And then I brought it to my current manager. This is many moons ago. And I said, hey, this is the thing. And she goes, I don't think that you're hard to manage. I go, let me reframe that terminology. I am super easy to lead. I love collaboration that comes very naturally. I'm super into all of that. And that is how our relationship works. So for you, it is not a challenge. However, think about the times when you've tried to tell me how I'm going to do things. How does that go? And she goes, oh no, I don't do that anymore. And I was like, yeah, that's manageability. I am really hard to manage. If you're going to come in and start telling me how to do me, you ain't been me. That's not going to work. That's okay though. These assessments are designed so that we can evaluate and estimate our nature. So evaluate and estimate where we are, not just in our own meat suit, but how that appears to the rest of the meat suits out in the world. And that's really what the clarity around assess comes to. So for the CARA method, an assessment is self-management with other awareness. I'm going to say that again. In the CARA method, assessment is self-management with other awareness. This is going to be ways that we can evaluate our nature, our abilities, the quality of how we are presenting ourselves, the consistency with which we present ourselves. 2 steps back. You are the center of your universe. I say this pretty regularly. You can scan back through the previous videos, but I'm going to continue to say it. At our basic, humans are meat suits, full of hormone soup, controlled by mush management, and made of stardust. It's an incredible experience, this human thing. It's universal and incredibly simple, although we're not simple because stardust. So we love to complicate things. And that's why assessment is the second step of the CARA method, because it doesn't matter how clear you get inside your own head, you're still inside here. And that's where you need to be. That is where you have the most power, control, and impact in the world. So we'll go on to assess. I'm going to call that the magic 3, hashtag magic 3. You will hear me say that regularly. Hashtag magic 3. What is the hashtag magic 3? I'm so glad you asked. I would love to tell you. It is how you have power, control, and impact. In a world as a meat suit, you are a universe in and of yourself. A universe, not the universe. It's a small difference, versus the, but it's a pretty big one. And the reason it is so important is because as your own universe, you have complete and total control here. You get to control the way you think, the way you speak, and the way you behave. Hashtag magic 3. With those, you have power, control, and impact. That's it. You don't, however, have any control over the other universes. Now, the impact that you make may impact them. That's when we start to get into that trauma drama space. Okay, not a therapist. So for the point of the CARA method, I will define those. But again, not a therapist, just a coach and a human being who has experienced both lots of trauma and lots of drama. What I have come to recognize is trauma and drama are essentially the same thing in completely different ways. So trauma happens when another meat suit crashes into your meat suit. You don't have control over them, so they crash. Trauma. You are now traumatized because of something they did that impacted your life. Now, provided there was not an intent for harm, it is recoverable. Same thing with drama. Drama is when your meat suit crashes into somebody else's. They didn't get control over what you did, but you came in and smacked into their reality and it has now impacted their life. They're traumatized, you're dramatized. See how this is working? Exactly the same, but completely different. And again, provided the intent was not harm, it is correctable. There are things that you can do. That's why assessment is so powerful, because you absolutely need to be the center of your own universe. You need to be totally in control of your universe. But since you are not the universe, you need to be aware of the rest of the universes around you. And that comes with feedback. And hopefully you read the announcement inside there. So trigger warning, we are going to talk about feedback. We're going to unpack this. Oh, hi, Mata Harima. I'm so glad to see you here. I love that. That's not what I want to do there. Okay. Brilliant. Ask questions as they come up. So we're going to assess. When we talk about clarity around assessment, it is that we have to self-manage, but we have to be other aware. And how do we do that? First, we check ourselves, our hashtag magic 3. What am I thinking? How am I speaking that into existence? And what am I doing about it? Because that's the first place you're going to find a big gap. One of my favorite gaps, and I don't know if this is true for you, but it is certainly true for me, is that I tend to think great, deep, beautiful thoughts. And I line up my behaviors because I'm absolutely aware that that's what everybody else sees. So I know what's in my head and you see what's going on. But my words, sometimes the language I'm using doesn't connect the two. And I've worked really hard at that. And it's through feedback that I have learned how to navigate that. So that's where we're going to realign around this entire assessment conversation is in feedback. And that's why there was a trigger warning at the beginning. Fun fact, 70% of employees want feedback, actively desire to be told, what am I doing well and where can I get better? But 70% of managers, of employers, do not want to give feedback. They're not sure how it's going to go. Let's unpack that for just a second, because it's one of my favorite statistics. Absolutely. We only control us. We don't control other people. So we don't know how they're going to react when we talk to them. We can do things to help mitigate and anticipate and prepare the space, but we don't actually know. I don't know what that was, but it was loud. Sorry about that. Okay. So today, one of the things I really want to do is we're going to seriously unpack this feedback assessment idea. So it is, feedback is when you take personal assessments, go out there, take a DISC assessment, go out there, take a bank assessment, go out there, get your profile XT, go out there, get your GNOS. If you need a profile DISC, GNOS, or a bank, let me know. I either do them or know someone who does, so we can make that happen. I love this. That being said, oh, she was here, she was gone. That was interesting. We'll see if she comes back. Moving on. So I want to realign you. Oh yeah, here she comes. I want to realign around how to do some feedback. Yay! There's your beautiful face. I love it. Wonderful.
I made it happen.
Yes! And everyone watching, this is amazing. So she's come, what is it, like 2 o'clock in the morning your time right now?
About to be 2 in like 20 minutes, but
Oh, you're amazing.
I love you.
Appreciate you so much. Yay. So I love that. I don't know how much of the previous portion of this you caught, but I'll recap really fast. So we're talking about the CARA method for assessment, right? So the second part of the CARA method is assess. So what is assessment? How do you do it? What is even, why is the point, right? So we talked about how assessment allows you to self-manage while also being other aware. And we assess that through our hashtag Magic3, which I know you and I have talked about, and feedback. Right? So I put a little trigger warning into the call today because this triggers people. When you start talking about feedback, I have watched entire rooms go. And I'm like, I don't care that you're not making eye contact. We're going to unpack this. One of my favorite statistics that I shared is 70% of leaders want feedback. Employees all the way through leaders want it. They want to know, what am I doing well? Where can I get better? 70% of employers don't want to give feedback because you never know how that's going to go. So I want to walk through a 4-step process. It's based on the CARA method so that feedback isn't so scary, so that we can start to get feedback, we can seek feedback, we can share feedback, and it's not gross. Because absolutely, it can get gross. Yeah. So my first one, and I'd love, this is perfect. So Mata Harima, for everyone else watching and coming in later, is an amazing, amazing stress management coach out of India. She does incredible work with people on navigating. Life is going to come with stress and distractions. You don't get a choice in that. Trauma, drama, we kind of covered that earlier today. So having a buddy to help you navigate that space makes it a lot easier. And she's amazing at this. So you're perfect to have in here today because the very first step to achieving really great assessments, to having really great feedback, is positivity. Yes. And so I'm kind of just going to pause there and invite you to come on mic and tell me what your thoughts are on positivity and feedback. What does that bring up immediately for you?
Oh, thank you so much for having me here once again, Kara. Oh my gosh. All right. With feedback, the first thing that came up in my mind was a technique that I had come up with, which is called the idiot box technique, which is I want to rename it, but I absolutely love the name, so I don't want to rename it. But essentially, what you're doing is you are gonna keep an anonymous box, and people are invited to drop in their feedback in there. And the way that this happens is you invite people to then sit down and have conversations on the feedback put in there. So it's not just, oh, I dropped in feedback, I don't know what's going to happen, are people going to look into it, are people. So weekly the leaders, the team come together and have conversations without knowing who put in the feedback, so there is not a lot of fear of backlash, fear of I don't know what people are going to think. So there are going to be there are going to have conversations, and eventually there comes a point, because a lot of people have this fear of being the idiot in the room, right? Like, what if oh, this is such a simple question, I don't know if I should even be asking. It's like, no, ask it, because you don't know how many people along with you are experiencing the same doubt but are afraid to ask it. So when you put it in the idiot box, you don't know who put it in there, but you can have a conversation without the fear of repercussions of all of those things. And eventually, when the team has had a lot of conversations around these concepts and has had a lot of weekly meetings, what that then allows them to do is slowly weave off of the idiot box and then have conversations face to face without fear of, well, once again,
Yeah.
getting hit by anything. Yeah.
I love that you bring up retaliation specifically. Yes, because that is the power play in getting assessed, in whether you're assessing yourself or you're assessing someone else feedback wise. It allows you to go turn retaliation into relation. Yeah, retaliation into relation. And that's the goal of all leadership, right? Is to have a relationship with, whether it is your team or your clients or your purchasers or your vendors, whatever that is. If you don't have a relationship with them, anytime anything goes sideways, it feels like retaliation, even if that's not how you meant it. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, the
Love
ego comes
that.
into the play. So yes. And regarding the positivity, oh, I love positivity, but I think the only thing, the biggest thing that kind of came into my mind was just self-assessment of what positivity looks like, because I think it's very important to understand. um, and I'm speaking from a personal perspective, you guys let me know what you think about it, but for me, I need to have an assessment of when I'm being positive and when I'm stepping into the toxic positivity, where I am going to the
Italian.
space of, yeah, where I'm going to the space of, let me ignore all the crap so that I can look at all the beauty in life. Like, no, 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 I need to look at the stuff that's coming up as well. So for me, positivity starts with self, literally everything starts with self-awareness for me, but positivity especially starts with self-awareness, is to know what's positive, what does feeling good feel like, what does feeling happy feel like, and sitting with those emotions. And essentially, now I know you love Inside Out, Cara, because you posted how hyped up you are about the second movie, and same. So it's about creating those characters in your mind. How do they look? How do they feel? How do they sound like? And then rebuilding those relationships with those emotions so that we can then create where am I being good? Where am I allowing joy to just be joyful? And where is joy taking over everything else, so that I still be joyful, even when I don't need to be, where I need sadness to show up, where I need anger to show up. So yeah.
Yes. Oh my God, I love that. Yeah, as a tried and true Pollyanna myself, I have to regularly make sure that I am making space for those uncomfortable feelings, because I tend to go for that silver lining. Yeah. So I'm going to share a tool. Here's a fun one. So in assessing positivity, one of the ways you can find out if you are presenting as somebody who is positive, because there's always a question, especially as a Pollyanna, I just assume I am showering the world with positivity. That doesn't actually mean that's what I'm doing all of the time, especially if I'm leading a team. Because here's some science, your brain is designed to look for problems. It's a survival tool. You have been built for this. It's a really good judgment. It is why growth and fixed mindsets are not good or bad. A fixed mindset may save your life. One of my favorite stories on that is, if you're being chased by a tiger and you come to a cliff and you have a growth mindset, you start looking up and down the cliff. Can I climb it? If I jump to the side at just the right time, can the tiger go in? There's too many options. You might just stand there stuck until the tiger comes and mauls you. But a fixed mindset's like, jump, period. It just says jump. And because it knows immediately, here is where we get mauled to death. There is where we break things. But break things is survival. Mauled to death is death. So our brain is designed to find those negative things. As a leader, to be able to switch that and turn it into a positive feed is exactly what you're just talking about. So I call it filling the emotional bank. All of us are emotional creatures. 58% of what we do is impacted by our emotions, whether we're intending it to be or not. Thank you, Amygdala Hijack. Love you so much. So one of the great things that I used to do with my team is I would give them 10 pennies and 1 quarter. And you have them in your pockets, right? Just put them in your pocket. You have to move all 10 of those pennies before you can move the quarter. So each one of those pennies is a positive. Hey, I saw you do this thing really well. Hey, I saw you do this thing really well. Hey, I saw you do this thing really well. Hey, over and over. In restaurants, it's like, hey, I saw you get the door. You answered the phone in less than 3 rings. You smiled first and was the first to speak when somebody walked in the door. You got to your table within 30 seconds and said hello to your people. I see you. I see you. I see you carrying a tray. And if you're working on a line, I see that you got all of your stuff before you got to your position. I see that you helped somebody else take a break. I see that you saw what somebody else was lacking, grabbed your stuff and their stuff. I see you. I see you. I see you. This fills our emotional bank so that we feel seen and heard and not just like we're a problem. And then they do something that needs a redirection or a correction or a clarification. That's that quarter every time. And that's why the amount is so much different, because a positive note is like a little penny, like, hey, here's a little win, here's a little win. And they add up. You have to add them up. But every time you do a negative, it's a big withdrawal from that emotional bank, big time. It's a whole quarter. So you can't do another redirection until you have filled back up that bank. Isn't that fun? Yeah. It's a really great way to start with positivity. I call this the CARA method to feedback, right? So we clarify, I see you. I don't see you as a problem. I see you. I see that you are here doing your job, doing the best. I see you. Well, then we can assess strategically, right? So if I'm going to then give some more feedback, I'm going to tie it into our strategic moves. I'm going to match it to the vision, mission, and values of our company. I'm going to tie it into the initiatives that we've decided we're taking for this quarter, whatever those things are, because then not only do I see you, but I see you as part of this team. I see you as an impactful member who can make moves towards the goals that we are heading to, even if it has to be a negative. Here's a really weird way that I have done that. One of my least favorite conversations as a manager is having to let somebody know that they smell. In an office, this is less of a problem because most people have their own spaces. But when you work in operations, which is a good 25 years of my experience, people are right next to each other. Even in a pandemic, 6 foot was as far away as you could get because you still have to work the same line to get things done, you know? And smells travel, especially if you're, say, passing things down a line to someone. And you have to have that conversation because it impacts everybody. So how, first you have to make sure you know that you see them as a valuable person, right? And then how do you connect smelling bad to strategic moves? I would love to actually get your thought on that. How would you do that? She's like, I don't know. I got no answer to that.
Yeah, I have literally no answer to that. I'm not even gonna lie. Yeah. I think top of my head, I'll say that throughout the session, I think, is setting up a space where they feel safe and valued. And I mean, you already kind of covered that, but safe, valued, and non-judgmental. And then sharing that this is something that we have noticed. What is something we can do to support you through the space? I don't know. That doesn't really affect with the you smell bad conversations. I'm excited to hear how you navigated that, because a very unique problem, and I know you're about to drop a very unique solution to it. So, yeah.
And it's really, I guess, maybe unique, but it's so only because it's so simple. When I say this, you're gonna be like, okay. So the plan with strategic, right? We've already told them we see them and we value them. Strategic ties them into the whole, right? So what you do impacts our whole wellness. So I want you to know that you're so important, but we've noticed a smell and it is impacting the people around you. You're so important, you have an impact. We want to make sure that that impact is as positive as it can be. And if you had to work next to somebody who you didn't think smelled the way you wanted them to, how would that feel for you? Would that make you want to work next to that person? Yeah. But does it make you not like that person? Oh, no. So we'll just be really clear. We still think that you are incredibly valuable, but we want people to like all parts of you and for you to be a part of this entire team. And to do that, I need you to go put this deodorant on. It really is that simple. People want to be a part of something. We need to belong. The studies are bottomless. Thousands and thousands of years of study that says humans choose community. Entities on this planet choose community. They will choose community or death. If given those two options, they will die rather than not be able to be a part of community. It's insane. So if you can strategically link that to how much value that they provide to the whole, it makes it way easier to want to do things. And the next step is that emotional intelligence. And so it's a third step because it's a higher level. You can attach anybody to, you can praise anybody, you can connect them to why they're part of the whole. And if you can't, let's talk. My email is CARA at Taking Care of Business. I'm just going to throw that out there because if you're not sure how to attach somebody to the whole and why they're a part of your team, we should absolutely have that conversation. I want to help you with that period. Ideally, if you're in leadership, you know why you have people in those positions. So you can strategically tie in their importance to the importance of the whole. But emotional intelligence is the next level, right? In that, we'll stick with the stinky person conversation, right? Because that's uncomfortable. But in that, there could be a lot of reasons why that is. It could be a medical condition. And if you work anywhere that has an HR, they're going to say, please don't ask that question. Please don't talk about that thing. That is not your place. That is a medical professional zone. You are not a medical, you're their boss, not their medical professional. Knock it off. So you have to have the emotional intelligence to recognize that there could be a 4,012 ways around that. And then that's when you start wanting to ask questions rather than just delivering information. And that's where emotional intelligence and then finally leadership comes in as far as feedback goes. So it starts by making sure that they know they're seen, give them that positivity, and then strategically tie them into why they're important, and then ask them a question. What's going on? Do you know that you have a smell? Is there something we need to be aware of? That's a really hashtag HR approved way to ask if there's a medical something happening that you don't have to ask about medical. Is there something that we need to know about? They get to decide what that is, period. But that's where the emotional intelligence comes in. That's where we're going to recognize that there could be any kind of response. And while we absolutely still need them not to smell, we need to recognize they're a human being first and not a cog in our machine. So we have to be prepared for what could come next. And that's why the last step is that leadership feedback. It's really, really getting good at asking more and saying less. Walking into that room and saying, yes, that I see you, you've been doing great. How do you feel things are going? Is there anything that's been coming up recently? Is there anything going on that we need to know about? Okay, can I share something with you that has come to our attention? We don't Here's one of the fantastic tools. So part of the achieving at the end of this, we clarified what is assessment. We assessed what is assessing. We realigned around how you can do assessment in order around feedback so it's not so scary. And then I'm going to give you a couple of tools to achieve with. One of my favorite is the do don't. Here's the question. Have you ever had a manager say, I need to talk to you? Just leave it at that. What happens to you when you hear that from your oh, I'm so glad it's not just me. It's like, oh, okay. Oh. Immediately you're like, am I in trouble? What did I do wrong? How have I failed? What am I going to get yelled at about? That is, again, goes back to that fixed mindset. Your brain is trying to protect you. You just got unknown information. So it wants to figure out what all the bad things could be. And since most of us have experienced that, if you don't want to be a boss that creates that experience for your team, you can start very simply with, I don't want to have a conversation about anything that goes wrong, that has gone wrong. I do need to talk to you. I still didn't give you literally any more information except I told you you don't have to be scared. Not HR approved, but depending on your relationship with your teammate, I have looked at teammates, specifically line cooks. So anybody who's ever worked in a restaurant will be like, yeah, that's how you talk to them. That makes sense. And I've said, look, I don't think you're asshole. I do think sometimes you speak without thinking. I don't think that you're a bad person. I do think we can get better. It's really that simple. Do, don't do. And thank you. One of the most powerful assessment tricks, tips, and hacks when you are receiving assessment from somebody else, when you're receiving feedback, or when you're giving an assessment, giving that feedback. See how I'm linking those two words? So feedback doesn't have to be so scary. It's just an assessment. Assessments make us better. It's my mental trick. I'm building it into your brain. But thank you. And it might seem weird because sometimes you're going to get feedback that you did not want to receive. That it is 100% they're coming at you with some information, because that's going to happen. Other people's brains work different than ours. Fair. But say thank you, because ultimately, whether you liked what they said or not, the fact that they were willing to give you that feedback is a huge sign of respect. They are now an ally. I have watched feedback turn an enemy into an ally so fast because story time. Right after I had recently been promoted to a management position from an operations position, it's a weird space to navigate because you have very deep personal relationships with people who were your coworkers and now you're their boss. And it kind of murkies the water. It's a place I'm very comfortable navigating, and it's not a place everyone is comfortable navigating. One of my teammates felt that they were being slighted because I was not as friendly with them as the people who, say, had been over to my house and we had a deep relationship with. And I said, I'm absolutely willing to have more conversations. We can go out and get our nails done, have drinks like that. I'm totally available for that. That doesn't bother me at all. But what's going on? And then she unloaded, just piled on how much of a failure I am, how I'm letting the team down, what I suck at, how I'm never going to achieve, just piled. She just had to purge some stuff. And I said, thank you. And that's literally all I said. Thank you for that. Because she was allowed to get that off the chest, and because I received without reacting, without retaliating, simply received it, it cleared things up. It was a magic moment. And I think we kind of touched on this earlier. When somebody has in your idiot box, the reason that you make it anonymous is because we're afraid of that retaliation, right? We're afraid of what could go badly when somebody finds out that we've said something, because then we'll get treated like we're the problem. We're the squeaky wheel. But what I will tell every leader watching everywhere in the world If you have one squeaky wheel, it's because the 5 gears are out of place, period. Yeah. If a wheel has gotten to a point where it's squeaky, that's not the first problem. It's just finally somebody's willing to say something. So I treat all feedback that way. When I got that pile on of negativity, that told me other people are thinking these thoughts. It's never just one, which means I just got the keys to the kingdom. I just got a full download of what is irritating my entire team. And I get to then decide, do I want to do something about it? Some of them I was like, nope, that's just who I am, and y'all are just going to have to deal with me. I will adapt to you, but you're going to have to adapt to me too. This is a two-way street. It's a relationship. And others of them I was like, oh, I simply had not looked at it from that perspective. And absolutely, I can do things to mitigate that. I can change that. Suddenly, this person who had been my biggest adversary in the company was suddenly my number one supporter because I accepted what they said. I simply thanked them. And then I started to make changes that showed I'd heard them. Huge. So thank you turns an enemy into an ally through feedback, period. And then the last tool I would share, and then I'm going to actually ask Madhurima to see if she has anything that she would share in this space and that's coming up, is reflect versus respond. That's the note that I have written down. I had to check. Yeah. One of the greatest power plays is to simply reflect what you heard them say. Thank you. I heard that you say that you think I am too connected to some of the teammates. I am not reaching out and creating those relationships with other teammates, and it is creating a division within our group and our community here at work. Thank you. I don't have to own it. It's right for them. But just because they're right doesn't mean I'm wrong. Just because I'm right doesn't mean somebody else is wrong. What's right for me is me, my meat suit universe. What's right for them is their meat suit universe. Sometimes the two align and sometimes they do not. But if I reflect rather than respond, rather than retaliate, rather than even asking a question, if you can build it into your habit to simply reflect back what you heard them say, you now have power. For multiple reasons. One, it tastes different when it comes out of your mouth. When somebody is talking at you, it tastes different than when you say those words back. You're like, oh, I can even taste the validity of some of them. And also you can taste the ones that you're like, nah, that's just a you thing. Sorry, princess. But it allows you to understand without having to agree. And that's foundational. What do you think, Madhurima?
Man, Cara, every time I'm on one of your spaces, you just drop so many dope bombs. It's like, never thought of it that way. And yet, that's so true. So, yeah, I absolutely loved everything that you shared. And I'm definitely going to watch the replay for when technology was not on my side and I ended up missing the better half of the conversation. But three things that did come up for me is one, based on what you suggested and shared today, one, coaching and leadership, huge. Like, even if you don't want to be like a certified coach, learn of the techniques coaches use because mirroring, reflecting, holding that space, huge things when it comes to leadership. So, absolutely love that. Second thing, you can't control how people feel about you. You cannot, for the love of God, you can influence it till a point. Beyond that, out of your control. You have no control over how, what particular thing that you didn't even think was a huge thing, tick them off to the point they hate you. And it's not your responsibility until they come up and share it with you that, hey, this pissed me off and this is why. And then you have the opportunity to either be like, let me reflect and come back to you about that, or just be like, F off, I don't care. But thank you so much for sharing. I didn't want it, but and get hurt about it. And to be fair, I'll be 100% vulnerable and real. I work on praise and validity. right? That's the way I function. And so every time someone gives me a feedback that I wasn't prepared for, or someone's like, hey, do I have permission to give a feedback on something you did, like right out of the blue? And I feel like, oh, I don't have an option of saying no. Then I am in a space where I'm like, I'm about to fight you. I'm going to note this down and make sure that this is the weaponry I'm going to use for the next time we have a fight together, kind of a thing. That's how I work. No offense, I'm trying to change it. But
Awareness is the
that's,
first step. Well done.
yes. And so I think um a lot of times it's about, you don't know how someone else is going to think about you. It's out of your control, and vice versa. They don't know how you're going to think about them. So just taking the step back and reflecting is huge. Kara, I absolutely love that. And I think the third thing is something which I always tell leaders is that I'm sorry, I have dogs playing in the background. If you can hear tippy tappy, I have dogs playing in the background. Um, Yeah, one of the things that I often tell leaders is to ensure that your team knows that the style of leadership you have involves you giving regular feedback and assessment to them, right? Because what this does is it doesn't make it a random occurrence out of the blue of, hey, I have a feedback for you. Like, okay, what should I do? Like, rather, oh yeah, Kara does this all the time. This is a part of her process. Let's sit down, let's learn what more we can do and learn from it and grow together, as opposed to being like, oh yeah, I don't know what's going to happen, am I going to get fired? So when you know that it's a regular occurrence, the fear of it goes out, and you are more in a space of learning to listen. Learning to listen is huge. You're not listening to respond, you're listening to listen. So yeah, just those three things, and then I'm gonna give it back to you and
Oh my
learn from you, Kara, today.
So I heard leadership coaching, absolutely. You're tooting my horn right there. That's my favorite thing I do in new normal leadership training that teaches this. How can you coach your team in 15 minutes and get rid of all of your hour-long one-on-ones? Yeah, because me, when I was in operations, needed that. And as a coach who is now emotionally certified and empathy circle certified and all of the letters after my name, it still works and it's so good, so I can teach that. Um, Thanks for the selfish prompt there. But then, so one of the things that I heard in there is you don't get to control them. You don't get to control what they think. You don't get to control how they respond. They don't get to control you, how you think, how you respond. And the thing I would love to throw in there is, luckily, most of the time, no one's thinking about you. It's a little insulting as we're the center of our own universe and we're thinking about ourselves all the time. So why aren't more people? Because we're amazing. Which, fine, valid, absolutely. However, everybody else is also the center of their universe, spending all of their time thinking about how amazing they are and wondering why people aren't paying more attention to them. So if it's relieving for all of my people pleasers out there, for all of my yes managers, for all of you who are out there working so hard to make people like you, you don't get to do that. It's not in your control. That's not in your space. And as a relief, they're not thinking about you probably hardly at all, not good or bad. They just are busy thinking about their own world and their own life. And knowing that makes things a lot easier for me. If I miss a response in an email and I'm beating myself up because I didn't respond within the first hour or the first day, also they didn't. Oh right, because all of us are busy living our own lives. Hashtag adulting. Why is it hard to make friends as an adult? Life. Facts. And then the last thing I heard there was making feedback a part of your regular routine. And I cannot emphasize this enough. For every corporation, for every culture, for every community, I do not care. If you have a group of 5 people who get together on a regular basis, feedback regularly as part of that experience is huge. And I would throw in there, if you're only doing them quarterly, looking at you, corporate America, quarterly reviews do not allow you to develop. If that is what you are using to develop your team, your systems, your processes, that's gross. And you want to know why it's not working? Because it was never designed to work that way. Quarterly reviews are for sharing initiatives, key performance indicators, vision, mission, and value for that quarter. That's it. You cannot develop and you cannot accurately do feedback that way. It needs to be more consistent and more personal than that. And then totally my own soapbox here, just because since I have a platform and I can do that, please stop putting the requirements for success within your feedback processes. If you want to know, has your team gotten a 90-day review from their managers? Don't put that in. Just go look. Because what ends up happening is if that's part of a quarterly review, guess who does all of their reviews the week before that? Your managers. Because they want that as a yes. And sure, that forces them into it, but that doesn't help you get better. That just helps you pretend things are fine. So if you really want to know what's going on in your team, I'm going to give you 3 questions, and it's this easy. What is something that we are doing so well? Leave a blank space, let them fill it in. What is something that we could do better? Leave a blank space and fill it in. What is something else that you need us to know? That's it. And they will tell you. And then you actually have to go do the work of listening, reading, reflecting, and deciding if any of it's something you want to impact. But that's your job as a leader to do the work. Please stop making it their job to make it easy on you. Stop. Stop doing that. That's literally not the way leadership works. Okay, I'm off my soapbox. Thank you so much. This was amazing. And